Well, another edition of Living the Good Life, podcast.com. That's our legal address. And we are honored to have a candidate for the United States House of Representatives, believe it or not. And unfortunately, I think he's in a state where he probably would rather be a Democrat than a Republican. However, I must say, Gerry, that you are by far the most qualified candidate to run for this office that I have ever seen in this state. Now look at your background, your history, and of course you've worked for one of my idols, General Petraeus. I just noticed that one the other day, and he was just an unbelievable general. I loved him, and I think everybody in the military did as well. But your background is just incredible. And you have more experience. Talk about foreign affairs. My goodness. Compared to the local, we got, nice guy you're running against, but I'm not sure his background is really anywhere near yours. But you got an uphill battle and you know it.
And this is our way to do our introduction for Good Life. And apart from that, you're going to tell us your story, and you even have another endorsement other than Steve Kass. So welcome, and please tell us a little bit.
10 cents will get you something, I'm not sure.
Informal podcast, as you can tell, Gerry, we're so happy to have you with us. Please tell us your story.
Sure. I'll start with why I'm running, and then I'll talk a little biographical sketch. I'm running for office because, quite frankly, I don't like the direction our country's going right now. I think American families could be better served, both the middle class and working families. I don't think the economy is. I mean, the inflation is killing our pocketbooks right now. You see it at the fuel pumps. You see it at the grocery stores. You see it when you go get prescription drugs, and housing. Quite frankly, is unaffordable here in the state of Rhode Island. So we could be doing a lot better as a nation. The second reason I'm running is I long have not been pleased with the way Rhode Island's been governed. I think our founding fathers wanted a little bit more balanced political structure. I don't say we need to be a red state, but it'd be nice if we were a little bit more purple, and we could have if you will, a little friction between ideas. And I think out of that friction becomes better solutions for American or Rhode Island families. And I running for this position right now, I don't, that's one step in that direction. But I think it would be good for Rhode Island to see a little bit more a balanced federal delegation. But I also think in the state itself, I think it would be beneficial to see a more balanced political system. I think that would be good for all Rhode Islanders. The third reason I'm running is the divisiveness in our country right now is unlike anything I've seen in my life. I don't remember the 60s. I was born in the 60s, but kind of came of age in the 70s and primarily the 80s. So I don't remember, but I don't remember anything this divisive. And when I started considering running for office, I called my old boss, who's a congressman. He's retired lieutenant general, and I asked him. I go, I'm thinking about running. Can you share your tips with me? And the first question he asked me, he goes, how well do you work with other people? And he's a Republican in a strong Republican area. And I go, well, you know me, I'm a colonel. I was colonel in the Marine Corps. You don't really get things done by ordering people, particularly your peers, to do things. You gotta compromise, persuade, and reach solutions that work for everybody, and still accomplish the mission. And he goes, good. He goes, because the extremes on both ends of the political spectrum are making it so difficult to get work done in the middle, and where the rest of us live. And I'd like to look at it as a bell curve. It seems like the low ends of that bell curve are the ones with the loudest voices right now. And I think it's creating the divisiveness in our country, one part of it, and can definitely contribute into it. And I think most of us live at the top of that bell curve, maybe a little to the right, a little to the left. And so we could be doing a lot better as a state and as a country if we learn to work together, work across party lines, come up with sensible solutions. So I want to bring common sense. I want to fight for common sense solutions in Washington. I want to fight divisiveness in Washington. And I want to do everything in my power to help fix the economy, get the country and Rhode Island back on track. Now, a little bit about my background. I grew up and attended North Kingstown High School, played football, baseball, and basketball there. I did okay at those sports. Went off to college, played a couple years of basketball there, went down to Wall Street, worked 2 years down there. Really wasn't my cup of tea. And a friend of mine, he was a teacher in East Greenwich, and he was a retired Marine colonel, pulled me into his den one Christmas Eve and said, he told me about Vietnam. And he was kind of emotional about it. And he had so much passion. And I didn't feel that passion. And he looked at me, he goes, "You make a good Marine Corps officer." So the next day I went down back to the recruiting station and signed up, and 30 years later, retired in 2019 and hiked the Appalachian Trail after I was done that. That was my retirement gift to myself. Did that with my son. We raised a bunch of money for a nonprofit that supports disabled veterans, and got into construction after that. But my passion, quite frankly, is public service. And I think being raised by two parents that taught in Rhode Island school system, the most important thing they imbued in me was service to others. There's no greater thing. And so I want to continue serving my country. I want to continue serving the state of Rhode Island. And that's why I'm running.
So how do you get there? Sounds terrific. What's the plan? I mean, obviously, this is largely almost exclusively a Democratic state.
No, it's a dictatorship.
Oh, stop. Editorializing there, Gary. So you're pushing a snowball uphill. How do you plan to get there? We're kind of excited to hear about that now that you are the nominee here.
Well, I think it's doing a lot of interviews like we're doing today, talking to people. It's a big district, but I'm getting out to every public event I can, shaking hands, talking to voters, and that's where I'm learning what's important to Rhode Islanders. And I know there's a bunch of fringe issues people like to talk about, but primarily the three big things that keep coming up over and over and over again. It's the economy. Well, I'll say it again. It's the economy. But behind that, I keep hearing about education, and I also keep hearing about immigration. And those are three things that I'm going to address on the trail. And that seems to resonate. Beside that, we're building I'd like to call it an army of volunteers to get out and door knock. I think probably the best way to have that voter contact is the door knocking. Like last weekend, we were up in Woonsocket, and we're out knocking doors. I stayed in a central place, and the volunteer would call me if someone wanted to meet me in person. I'd drive over. It was rainy that day, and they were just happy to talk to my volunteers. But that's what we plan on. That's what we plan on doing. And I think if I can get my story out, what I stand for, and let me back up on one thing about being a Republican. I grew up in a Democrat household. My father served on the North Kingstown School Committee as a Democrat. My mother was on the North Kingstown Planning Board. My dad in the 80s, my mom in the 90s. Both Democrats, and I call them JFK Democrats. That's the household I grew up in. And what happened is after I joined the Marine, and to be frank with you, Ronald Reagan was probably a four-letter word in my household when I was growing up. My dad lost his job during some of the Reagan cuts. But after I joined the Marine Corps and I started traveling around the globe and seeing other countries and other cultures, you start realizing how fortunate we are to be born in this country or to immigrate to this country and become citizens. We are the greatest country in the world. I still believe we're the greatest country in the world. We need to work together a lot more. But I still believe, like Ronald Reagan said, we're the shining city on a hill and a beacon of hope and freedom for the world. So that's where I came. But my political maturation took place in the Marine Corps and really had nothing to do with the Marine Corps. It was traveling the globe and seeing other cultures and other countries and realizing how fortunate we were. And the second thing that helped me and kind of move from probably left of center to right of center, and maybe a little further, was I read a book in the mid-90s written by Arthur Schlesinger, and who used to work for the for the Kennedy administration. And I don't know if he had a maturation himself politically, but he wrote a book later in his life called The Disuniting of America, and had a profound effect on me, because I believe we are one culture, we are one country, we have one flag, and we have, and when you read his book, he talks about a playbook that, in my opinion, was a Democrat playbook of kind of divide and conquer, break us into tribes in this country, and consolidate power that way. And to me, I'm a red, white, and blue guy, and again, we have a common culture, we have a common history. That's what binds us. We all come from different nations, but that's what binds us. And I want to bring a sense of rest. I want to restore that in our political dialogue.
Wow.
Inspiring.
Yes. By the way, I interviewed Ronald Reagan in 1980.
Did you really?
I did. And he was as charming and wonderful to deal with. He flew in from Hollywood, and he was late, and he was stuck at Logan, and he couldn't get to my studio. So he called me on a payphone. He said, "Steve, I started my career in radio, and I would never stand you up because you're a radio guy." And it was wonderful. Then, of course, in those days, on a payphone, every so many minutes, somebody would cut in and put another quarter in.
That's right.
And he was ready, and so we had that going on. Oh, it's just, but anyway, it was.
At least we don't have to grapple with that these days.
No, we don't. Those days are over.
Steve, can I tell you a funny story about the payphone?
Sure.
So when I was working for General Petraeus in Afghanistan, I flew home. You had like 10 or 15 days leave. I was there with him for a year. And I fly back, and I land in Atlanta airport. My payphone's my cell phone doesn't work anymore. And I found a cell phone. It was hard to, not a cell phone, a payphone. I found a payphone. So and I don't have any change. So I reverse the charges, and I call my house. My youngest daughter picks up the phone, and it's the operator saying, "Will you accept the collect call?" And she's like, "Huh? Huh?" And I go, "Jamie, just accept the call, please." And then she goes, she accepts it, and she goes, "Dad, what are you calling from?" I go, a payphone. And she goes, "What's that?" And that's how much the world's changed.
Wow.
That's a good story. But she did accept the call, I assume. Yes,
she did. She
good
did.
Girl. A good girl.
Otherwise, be one angry dad. You're not going to accept a call from your father.
So if I may ask, you've been quoted as being a moderate, bipartisan bridge builder. Can you address that part that says bridge building? I know you spoke earlier of the divisiveness. Surely we are. You certainly had some Democrat foundation from your family. What does bridge building look like to you? How does that happen?
I think there's a few caucuses down in Congress that are bipartisan caucuses. They go by different names. Some of them have veterans in them that are on both sides of the political aisle, and they work together to try to solve problems that are in the best interest of the country, and they're not playing politics. My role model growing up, my hero growing up was John Chafee, and I thought John Chafee was a bridge builder. He and Steve, you may remember, he got beat up a few times when he crossed party lines and come up with a compromise solution that worked. And what was most important about him is he never forgot who sent him there. And I don't think the Republican was as important to him as the people he was representing. And I think sometimes that gets lost. I'll never forget that. I think our founding fathers, I think you all know historically, our founding fathers, one part of the Constitution they didn't recognize was the formation of political parties. George Washington, there was no political party. I think a bridge builder is an independent thinker, and it's someone that recognizes it's the people that sent them to Washington, D.C., and that's who you're representing. You're not representing yourself. You're not representing your party. You represent the people that sent you there. And one of the things I like to remind people keep asking, so you're running for David Cicilline's seat? And I go, no, I'm running for the people's seat. He happens to sit in that people's seat for a while.
Oh, really? You mean you're representing all the voters? That's something new right now these days. Politicians who are strictly in it for themselves on both sides of the aisle.
Absolutely great.
Depressing. You know, I mean, given your background, I mean, you've been to Afghanistan, you've been everywhere. I mean, your knowledge and your experience with all these countries, and that we agree on so many things. I mean, John Chafee was a good friend too. So it's another hero for me because I was pretty young when I met him. We're dealing with now China, we're dealing with Iran, we're in Russia, the Ukraine. I mean, our military obligations right now are phenomenal. Our country has not really kept pace with certainly China, as an example. And Russia seems to be finding new capability in terms of dealing with Ukraine, which is scary. And we gave up that base in Afghanistan, which was horrific. And you pointed out so eloquently in that journal article, the assets, and you are absolutely right. I mean, that was a great base to keep strategically, et cetera. And now coming to roost, given its location, would have been a tremendous asset to have, knowing what we're facing.
Good point. Right.
So to take some of the issues, I mean, China, number one, are we going to defend Taiwan if they're attacked? I would find that hard to believe that we can pull that off.
What's your position? Yeah.
Two questions. So the military question, I think historically we've had an obligation there, but I think we've maintained a policy of ambiguity vis-a-vis Taiwan. China, in my opinion, is our greatest adversary outside of our own borders. I'll come back to what I think the greatest existential threat to our country is, but China certainly is outside of our borders, and you can see and I think China's been doing this for 30 years. I think we've helped them get to where they are right now, but I think I like to use the expression, they've been playing chess and we've been playing checkers. The 70% of the ocean trade in the Pacific goes through the South China Sea. And you can look at where the artificial islands are that they're building. You and I both know what their aim is vis-a-vis China. It's been long. Taiwan. It's been stated for a long time. I think and I'm shifting gears a little bit. I think the CHIPS Act was probably a step in the right direction from my understanding of it, to get some of our offshore strategic manufacturing capabilities back into the United States. But we certainly need to incentivize that. But China's a threat. They don't want to they're not looking at this just militarily. Economically, you can see what they're trying to do with the currency, with the dollar. They've long wanted a basket of currencies. And I mean, we benefit greatly as a nation. I think sometimes we don't understand it, that the US dollar is the reserve currency for the world. And we've taken advantage of that. And it's allowed us to print money when we shouldn't be printing money. So China's threat, I will tell you, Steve and Deb, in my mind, the existential threat to our country is our national debt, and it's absolutely unsustainable. And we're putting an anchor around the feet of our grandchildren and great grandchildren with this debt that's growing. It's supposed to double by 2053. Seems to double every administration, and this is both Republican, Democrat administrations. Spending and I'll use a Marine Corps expression, like drunk sailors. we need to rein it in. You can't make it happen overnight, as I think you get a Herbert Hoover effect in a Great Depression. But I think we need to incrementally figure out how to get our spending under control. 17% of our annual spending is to pay the interest on our debt. That is crazy.
You know how much money that is?
What's that?
You know how much money that is?
How much money is that?
It's as much as our defense budget, interest this year.
It's crazy.
Interesting
And
analogy.
everybody, the Congress, the geniuses in Washington, they're all upset about 24 billion going to Ukraine on top of 70. Well, it's almost what, 800 billion in interest you're paying on the national debt a year. Think about that one. 800 billion for no reason other than stupidity, and 70 billion to save a country from an invasion from a monster.
Right.
Go put those numbers together and say, and the American public doesn't even know it. They have no idea that we're spending that much money on interest this year.
And
what does that mean for the future for our children and grandchildren?
As he pointed out.
And yes, absolutely. And there was one other point I was going to say on that, and it escapes me at the moment. So I apologize.
When we think about politics, and all politics is local, and you mentioned the continued spending and the escalation and the interest, I think most people just find it incomprehensible, the number of zeros that we're talking about here. And what they do understand is my ox is gored if you cut some spending, even though you have to cut something. How do you get to reconcile those two things? Talk about building a bridge. Having people adjust and wrap their minds around, we don't really mean to hurt you, Mr. or Miss, but somewhere something has to be cut in taxes and spending and whatever else you want to say.
Something has to. I don't know if it's a balanced budget amendment. That I think that certainly would help. I think we've talked about it for years, and I don't know if the political will's been there to move that direction. But I'll go back. It was about 2010. It was during the President Obama administration. Two things happened. He set up a commission. It was the Simpson-Bowles to take a look at our financial spending every year, and they came up with a number of recommendations that would help reduce our deficit spending every year, and none of those got implemented, and they didn't have any teeth. If I go down to Congress, and hopefully I do, and I'm privileged to go down there and represent Rhode Island, but I think we need to put a committee on fiscal responsibility back together, but we need to create it into a law that then whatever the recommendations that come out of that commission, there's an up and down vote on those recommendations. So everybody's on record of where they stand. The second thing that happened in 2010 was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, with a number of people in the military establishment, came out and stated what they believed the existential threat to our nation was, and they at the time said it was our national debt, and that seemed to that's been lost over the years. But that was 2010. Both of these things took place, and nothing became of it. I know we're chasing other existential threats. I've heard other crazy ones, but every great country and every great empire has fallen internally, and it's generally been because of their economy.
Wow. Of course, you've covered a lot of topics that as you pointed out the three big ones, and how the state of Rhode Island, with its $14 billion budget for less than 1 million people, or barely 1 million, maybe, I don't know how many have stayed, a lot of people have left. That's just an outrage in itself. The per capita number is frightening, and yet it's going to be the highest in the world. I mean, damn near it. I can't imagine any state with so few people spending so much money. And,
right.
And the tax picture represents that, as we know. So that's a big help. If we could only control our spending in Rhode Island,
A good start.
that's the biggest thing we could do for our economy. But
And
God forbid
politics.
anybody, they get all this federal money, and where did it go? I don't know. I'm not sure. You
Right.
know?
I have no idea, but yes, we have long had a problem in the state of Rhode Island of figuring out how to stay, keep a government within its means. We've overspent, and it's what's terrible to look when I joined the Marine Corps, let's say 35 years ago. Rhode Island was ranked somewhere between 45 and 50 for business environment in the country. We're still ranked that. We haven't moved the needle. And
We made it work.
Absolutely. So why I think every question should start with why. Why are we still ranked near the bottom of the barrel? And then once we answer that question, we can figure out how do we get to a solution. Educationally, I saw a stat the other day that had us ranked 27th, and that was the high end, and then down in the 40s on the low end. That's it. We're Rhode Island. We got some of the best universities in the country right here. Why is our educational system failing our kids? I will also tell you, economically, we need more vocational training. I've talked to a number of business owners that have said, we need more skilled labor here in the state of Rhode Island. And I would say maybe one of the things that would attract outside companies, besides incentivizing them to come here, which that needs to take place, that if you had a larger skilled labor pool, and we need to start teaching our young people again that there's honorable professions and, quite frankly, well-paying professions in the trades, and quite frankly, that possibly lead to their own business someday. So we need to take a look at our education system in Rhode Island. We need to take a look at our spending in Rhode Island. And what's disconcerting is the biggest employer in the state of Rhode Island is the state of Rhode Island. There's a country that used to look like that. It was called the Soviet Union.
Yes, sir. So
anyway,
so we need to say, how do people learn more about you and your fundraising events and your website? Please share.
So my website is leonardforcongress.com. Let me give you my campaign phone number. Give me one sec. I don't have it memorized off the top of my head.
That's okay.
And
it's a good opportunity, at least while you're looking for that, Steve, it's a good opportunity for people who are viewing this and will be viewing this to learn a little bit more than what the 10-second sound bites can do. And even what we've been reading in Ian Donna's Providence Journal, we're happy to have you have an opportunity to flesh out some of the positions that you have in a larger scale.
How much money do you have to raise to do this, in your opinion, right?
And how much?
So we are, I know that the other side's going to outraise me. I've known that before I jumped in. When I jumped in this race, I looked at the pool of candidates on the other side. I was waiting to see what Arlene Violet was going to do because she has name recognition. When I looked at the candidates on the other side, outside of the lieutenant governor, I don't know if anybody had name recognition. So I think for all of us, it was an uphill, row, an upstream road to get our name out there. And again, doing forums like this is to me the quickest and the easiest and the most inexpensive way of doing that. So I need to do every single media engagement I can do. I think I have a good story to tell. I think I have a good message to tell. I think I'm a commonsensical person. I think I have the backbone that is required in Washington, D.C. to think on my own 2 feet and make decisions on behalf of Rhode Island. They're gonna outraise us. The bottom line, we're gonna keep on raising as much as we can raise. I'm putting money in myself, which for a colonel, that's what I'm putting in is a good hunk of my retirement. But to me, it's worth it. To me, there's a real opportunity to win this race, and I'm going to fight every day to get to show Rhode Islanders that I am the most qualified candidate for them. Can I give you that phone number?
Please
Sure.
share.
It is 401 forgive me. I'm gonna quote George Washington. Not only did I give 30 years of my life to my country, but I also gave my eyesight. So I'm going to put glasses on real quick because I can't read it.
That's okay. So
it's 401-855-1737.
And again, that website
Who's going to answer?
Brandon, you. And that website again, please, if you would.
It is leonardforcongress.com. And for your listeners out there, you can go to that website. You can sign up to be a volunteer. Right now, the most important part of this campaign is going to be turning out the vote and getting the vote out. And
is there a donate button?
There is a donate button in there. I need money. Money helps. Volunteers help. Anything that people can do to help put us over the top on November 7th. I will be incredibly grateful.
How upset are you that the National Republican Party is not jumping in and helping you?
Yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was down in Washington last week, and I met with a number of people. We'll see where the party falls out. I think if we'll see how when the first real polls start coming out, we'll see where we are and see what happens there. I think the word "yet" is a good way of saying it.
Good.
There's I think people are starting to realize there's a real opportunity here.
Let us pray.
And we're happy to give you a forum here to expand a little bit on your positions and get to know you a little bit better.
It's been a great pleasure learning more about your background and getting face to face and talking to you. And we're going to do it more often, believe me. And I got to tell you, I have never been as impressed with a candidate for the House from this state as I am with you. And I will do whatever I can to help.
Steve, thank you very much.
Thank
you, Deb.
A great asset, really.
Thank you to both of you. Anytime you want to chat, I'd love to chat. And thank you for all you've done for Rhode Island.
My pleasure. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. God bless.
God bless.